What's going on, everyone? Today is October 11th. It is Wednesday. It is your midweek market review. Tomorrow is CPI at 8:30. You have yearly and monthly being released. Going to be very volatile. I'm going to go into DXY. Henry is going to go into ES. You guys know the drill. If there's anything else you guys want us to go over on these midweek reviews, please let us know in the comments below. We very much appreciate it and have no problem going over what you like to trade also if you want our opinion. Main things to consider going into this, a couple notifications, if you will. Obviously, tomorrow CPI at 8:30, yearly and monthly. Really, this call is not to give you any specific bias going into tomorrow. Right now, where we are within our charts and where we are within what's going on in the world events, it is very smart and responsible to kind of just turn on a present little neutral bias, understand what PD arrays, premium arrays, discount arrays we are looking at. Note that we do not hold any hard bias going into these news events. It's something that we just want to get you guys to understand where we're looking, where we're studying, and knowing what could potentially unfold on both sides of the market and how that daily closure tomorrow affects going into the rest of the couple weeks, right? I will not be here this weekend. I will not be here on this call or on the call on Sunday. I have a wedding to attend. I will be out of town. So the show is Henry's. Other than that, I think that's about it with me. Obviously, keep trying as you continue to dig in your email and find any emails from team@firsthandtrading.com. Make sure you add those, subscribe to them so they are out of your spam. If you just click and drag them out of your spam into your inbox, that will not necessarily continue it into spam, and that helps us a lot with regards to trying to get communication on our end to you via email. Other than that, keep liking, keep tweeting, keep subscribing, keep retweeting, whatever you can to continuously help us. I am constantly trying to respond when and where I can to you guys, whether it be DMs, training exercises, posts in the social forum, posts in the regular forum, whatever the case is. I am trying to keep up with you. I know Henry is doing as well. You guys are doing great. You guys are being active. Continue doing what you're doing. We like it. We love it. I think that's about it for me on my end with regards to announcements. Henry, you have anything?
That's it for me.
Okay.
We'll go through this review and I'll talk with you this Sunday.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, then I will go ahead and start with DXY. Lots of things going on, both inside and outside of the market, politically in the world. If you guys have not understood what is going on with regards to Israel and Palestine and stuff like that, whatever side you choose, whatever that is, this is not political, but you want to understand how things like that can trigger a lot more volatility, and especially on a week like this week where you have several big kind of announcements. Today we have FOMC minutes, tomorrow's CPI, we have another red folder news event on Friday. The volatility will be there, so expect potential large range days, expect seek and destroy templates, and understand the risk that comes with that, right? Whatever your regular risk is, it does no harm to cut that risk down in environments like this with regards to when and where you're trading, because when you get into these worldly events, they might not influence to a degree with regards to algorithmic price action. Sometimes they do, but the volatility in general is something that you need to take into effect and know that what's typical isn't no longer typical for a certain period of time. So I want to keep that in the back of your mind, and especially when we're going over something like the US dollar, it's good to start to get your microscope down and start to really understand what's going on. Like I said to start, I am kind of neutral just going into tomorrow. I know I've been bullish on dollar, and I theoretically still am, but on a day like tomorrow with everything going on, it just does me a peace of mind of just going tomorrow neutral. But I will show you what I'm looking at. So obviously we had this weekly BISI. Price pulled up into it. With regards to bearish order flow, respected it very cleanly, okay? We have the 25% on the monthly, and we have obviously the SIBI low on the monthly too. Price pushed up into that monthly SIBI, also into this weekly BISI, and for the most part, on the side of weekly order flow, looked pretty bearish, I will admit. So we did not, I was looking at seeing if we respected the monthly SIBI low as inversion to go higher. We did not. We had a weekly BISI in here. We've kind of given way to that. We have another weekly BISI down here, so that's where my eyes go. That's the next level. Now, obviously, this week has not closed yet, but I'm curious to see if and when we close above or below this weekly BISI. That's kind of where my eyes are at right now. We also, obviously, off of last week's candle, we pushed up into the 25% on the weekly rejection block and then came off of that, right? So now if this candle is going to potentially act as a near-term or intermediate-term bearish order block, if we get back below this BISI, I'm curious to see if we act as resistance, right? Because this candle right here would become a bearish order block in the near term if we decide to invalidate, come back higher, and then go lower, right? That's something that I could see on the bearish side of things. On the bullish side of things, we could potentially come into here, maybe wick a little bit, but overall have some form of closure in, above, or around this BISI, and then go higher, right? And then, you know, obviously, if we find a reason or if we see over time price decides to invert this, right, we would have to get back over that. So now that we've kind of gone below it, even though we haven't closed yet on the week, right, if price comes back up into here and we decide to come back up into here, right, how do we use that? Do we use that as inversion? Right, do we use that as inversion and go lower? Or are we able to come back through it and then use it as resistance, or excuse me, as support and go higher, right? That would be a bullish scenario, right? Bearish scenario would be prices inverted and used as resistance, and you get price to come back lower, right? So there's two things there that I'm focusing on a weekly. If I go into the daily, couple things to note on the daily. This daily BISI, right? So if you were on the call on Sunday or if you watched the call, I had this area marked out, 106,500 to 106,700. It was the consequent encroachment of the daily rejection block and the mean threshold of this daily order block. Inside of that is the consequent encroachment of this BISI on the daily, right? You can see that on Monday, we pushed up higher into that area that I told you guys to watch out for, and then go lower. And then on Tuesday, yesterday, we pushed up into the low of this BISI and was very sensitive in going lower. Right now, the only thing that I'm seeing with regards to potential retracements higher into PD arrays, premium arrays going lower would be kind of this order block right here that we've already talked about, right? We've already talked about the mean threshold of it, but now I'm looking at the open and the low of it and understanding that there's a volume imbalance in here. So price could very well come up into here, then potentially go lower. If price decides to get above that, I would be curious to see price use it as support, right? And come reclaim these levels. Another thing to focus on, obviously price came today, tapped into this SIBI low and was very sensitive, right? It's got this demeanor right now. Dollar has this demeanor that it's slipping, right? It's coming up, it's filling an area. And I think that that can mean two things, right? That can mean two things. It can mean that price is not going to go any higher and it's going to continue to go lower and fill areas down here where you have a BISI and a volume imbalance in and around the 104 area, right? You still have unfilled fair valuation and this BISI below 104,500, 104,400, give or take. So price could continue just slipping down here, or if price does react in a bullish stance to this BISI, you could play in and around this 105,400 level, 105,300 level, and then go higher. And all of this immediate rebalancing would just mean that there's going to be no speed bumps on the way higher, right? If price is already immediately rebalancing, it could be two things. It could be price is not going to go back up there, or if and when price does decide to continue going higher, there's not going to be road bumps in that move higher. It's going to be very silk slip, just straight higher for the most part. There's nothing really slowing it down. So there's two scenarios, obviously, one side bullish, one side bearish that I'm looking for, but I'm noting that everything has already been filled, right? There's no displacement. There's nothing clear here that price needs to go back and fill besides this potential volume imbalance. On a 4 hour, though, I will say we talked about on the Sunday call too, was this being a potential 4 hour breaker. But the thing is we have not closed below that level yet either. So I'm going to be very close to study this 4 hour candle if we get closure below. You can see we've already started getting that seek and destroy price where it's just high, low, high, low, high, low, nothing algorithmic at all. It's just straight manipulation. If and when price decides to close below here, and let's say it tests this BISI on the weekly, and we close, I'd be very curious to see how sensitive we are coming back up into it, right? Are we very sensitive to it, and do we decide to go lower and break through that BISI, right? And then start to use that as resistance, right? This would be kind of what it would look like bearish terms, right? We've got open-ended fair valuation in here. Price hasn't fully filled. Obviously, some relative equal lows in here. You kind of got trend line liquidity, stuff like that. But there is a breaker right here that I would like to see price at least run to if it's going to go even lower. I wouldn't necessarily focus too much on this yet. I would like to see price get back below this breaker without filling this displacement. We've got a volume imbalance right here. But for the most part, candle bodies don't show that it fully filled to sell side. So that would be the bullish stance for me, or bearish stance, excuse me. And then going into a bullish stance, I would want price to potentially drop into this weekly, but then not really have any way towards this breaker, right? If it drops into this weekly, or even if it drops down into this area, but has a very clean recovery and closes back above here, I would want price to get back above that breaker and then be very sensitive to that level, right? We've got a level right here, which is previous week's high. If for whatever reason we get back above that previous week's high, I would want it to be pretty sensitive. And then I would want it to start tearing through all of this because everything's been filled, right? Something to note, there's no displacement that has it. There's a tiny, 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 tiny SIBI up here. But I would want it to start kind of breaking through all of these arrays and kind of start making its way higher, right? One thing that I will note with regards to buy side is going to be last Friday's NFP candle, right? Long wick. Obviously, we're coming off of a weekly BISI, but I want to kind of understand that it is a long wick, and those tend to obviously act as rejection blocks up front in the near term, but then in the longer term, they kind of form as liquidity, right? And so we do have a tiny little SIBI right here that we could potentially reach to some relative equal highs if we are going to continue that, right? Right now, if you're bullish, this is just a deeper retracement into areas that we have yet to fill. But like I said, if you're bearish, it depends on whether you're near term or long term, right? I'm not necessarily long term bearish on dollar yet. It still hasn't given me anything, right? I still have been talking about whether or not we close below this low, right? It looks like right now that we're potentially going to close below the low. It hasn't happened yet, so I can only just assume and potentially expect and have two different neutral biases on bearish and bullish standpoints on how I'm going to react on both sides. But at the end of the day, when you go into a day like tomorrow with CPI, you want to understand what potentially you're looking for on both sides of the market. Do not go in it on one side as one-sided as you think that you should, because for the most part, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. That's my 2 cents on dollar. I'm kind of going to wait, and I will give an update actually tomorrow night on my specific take on what the day closes at, and I will let you guys know updated after all that stuff. It is a crazy day. I will not be trading tomorrow. I will be trading on Friday. But with regards to tomorrow, I am completely neutral. I will not be in the marketplace. There will be a lot of volatility. And sometimes, obviously, yes, volatility is good, but sometimes too much volatility on a day like tomorrow with everything going on in the world, it is very nice to just be neutral, watch, and wait for that 5 o'clock p.m. Closure, because then you'll get so much more data and info. But if you do choose to trade tomorrow, please be responsible. Other than that, that's it for me on dollar. Obviously, let me know on social or DM me if you have any questions, but I'm going neutral. I'm not necessarily trying to call any form of direction or level on dollar. It's up to the market to let me know and let me speculate it, and it will give me more data tomorrow. Other than that, the rest is Henry's.
All right. We'll hop into ES and touch on NASDAQ quickly as well. There we go. All right, so starting with ES on a monthly chart, you can see we've started off October with a little bit of a gap opening higher, reaching down into the sell side down here, and then returning up into the range of this monthly VISI between this candle's high and this candle's low. Let's go ahead and drop down into a weekly chart here so we can see a bit more what's going on. So now, kind of returning up into this this city created here on the weekly chart. This candle's low and this candle's high right here, creating that inefficiency. We've only had sell side delivery here, only delivering lower. So it makes sense to return up into here to redeliver the buy side. This kind of gives me one point of interest to look at going into tomorrow and the rest of the week, which is the consequent encroachment of this weekly city right here. So marking out the midpoint between that candle's low and that candle's high. See the dotted line right here. And it's closely in confluence with these two up close candles right here, which would be your bearish order block. So just looking at that as an area of interest, an area to watch going into tomorrow and see how we respond here. Is this respected, and do you start to see price potentially turn off that and look for some lower targets? Or do we just cut right through there and then you could look for some of these higher objectives? So the monthly VISI high up here, the high end of this weekly city, and then eventually buy side if we do start continuing high enough there. I'll go ahead and mark that as a order block there. And then we'll go into the daily chart. Okay, so on Sunday's call, we talked about the consequent encroachment of this wick here. We talked about it the previous week before as an area that we'd like to see hold to reach into the sell side targets, which we saw right here. And then on Sunday, we talked about how when we get, or if we get closure above the consequent encroachment of this wick, then we'd be looking for a deeper retracement into some of these inefficiencies up here. So we have this daily city right here, small volume of balance right here, and then another daily city right here as well. So we did get that closure here on Monday, and now you can see price has kind of been in a bit of a hurry to run up into some of these inefficiencies here, leaving a VISI behind here, and then creating another VISI here, and a volume imbalance today. And now a bit of a gap opening going into Thursday's price action. So the fact that this is moving quickly off of that low and closing through all of these premium arrays, like the consequent encroachment here, the opening price of this up close candle here, and then the high, and then reaching back through and closing through on a daily chart the consequent encroachment of the monthly VISI. And it's not showing any effort to return into these discount arrays that are being left behind. That tells me that this is likely to continue potentially a little bit more of a sustained run. I'm not saying that it is going to go right up here right away, but it's definitely possible to see it continue reaching up into a couple more of these premium arrays that I mentioned. So the bearish order block on the weekly chart, the consequent encroachment of the weekly city right here. And then you have the high end of this daily city, and then the volume balance and daily city up here. So just keep an eye on these. If we do start to get closure above this monthly VISI high, that's when I would be interested in seeing if we do reach up to the high end of this weekly city, and then there's a small inefficiency in here as well. Okay. Don't want to make any hard bias decisions going into CPI because it truly is a gamble, can go any way on that news release. But just keep an eye on some of these areas to potentially trade to, and then follow your discount arrays as well. Right. So we've got the VISI right here, the VISI here, and there's a small volume imbalance nested in here between these two candles as well. Right. You can see that. So you can take a look at those, 1, 2, 3, and also look at the wicks and follow the consequent encroachment of the wicks. If you look at the midpoint of each of these, and you can identify those as discount arrays, right? So you have like your volume imbalance, you'd have the consequent encroachment of this wick, and you'd have this BISI right here, and you have another BISI resting below. So as we start to break through 3 of them, if we do drop back down lower, then you could potentially look for a continuation down towards sell side if that objective is going to be met. But if we start to see these respected and we're trading and closing through these premium arrays, then I'm going to be shifting toward looking up here. Okay. But yeah, really, there's a lot of volatility going on right now, a lot of things going on in the world. And we have reached into some of these higher time frame sell side objectives as well. So this retracement and this expansion to the upside makes sense here, but still have to remain neutral, at least going into the remainder of the week. One last thing to note here is if you take your fib and draw it from the highest high back in July down to this recent low on the trend line, so it's easier to see there. So marking out that as the range, the midpoint that comes up, it's in a different color. It's a bit hard to see there, but let me remove this a second so you can see it. Midpoint is right here at 44.60.5, which is very closely aligned with the high of that monthly BISI as well. Okay? So that's an area we could potentially reach up into and still be able to return into lower targets from there. I like that as an area of a potential turning point if we are going to see a turn back lower. But if we do get the closure above that, that becomes kind of like the last straw for me to hold on to at least an immediate reach back down to the sell side, and then we'd start looking for buy side targets if we do get the closure like that. I'll quickly go into NASDAQ, which we've seen continue to be the leader. So dropping down here into a bit of a small piece of this BISI on the monthly chart after moving through this BISI here, and now returning up into the range. And you can see that this candle has already returned back above the monthly BISI high. I just marked out the last up close candle here and the opening price as a bearish order block or a potential area we could use as the draw toward the going into the end of this week. So that 15,513.5 level. Keep that marked on your charts there. And then down into a weekly chart, you see that we're starting to move through this SIBI on the weekly chart. It's also a volume imbalance right here. Okay. And so you're seeing how we're just cutting through these areas, and that gives me the sense that we could continue pushing up into some more of these premium moves. So keep an eye on this area, that bearish monthly order block. And then I'll drop down in the daily chart. Same concept here as we're seeing on ES, but even more exaggerated on NASDAQ. So you see how we're getting this expansion through this high right here after running out the sell side. And you can see how all of these inefficiencies are being created with very little attempt to return into and redeliver the sell side on them, right? So we have here, look at this opening. So we close here and open here. So you have a bearish volume imbalance, which is then traded through and closed above. So that's immediately showing bullishness to you, that we opened lower and then close above it. Then the next candle here, another volume imbalance, trading through and back up, but leaving a BISI behind right here. And then another BISI created here, and then another volume imbalance today. So each day opening higher and expanding higher without much effort to return into these discount arrays. That shows me that we could continue to extend a little bit higher. So now we're having a bit of a gap opening just above this volume imbalance you saw on the weekly chart. And so this is an area we could potentially see as inversion and then trade up into this signal remaining here on the daily, okay, which is aligned with that monthly bearish order box. Keep an eye on those areas, and then just look at these discount arrays for potential areas to return to if we do see price return back lower. that is pretty much it. I won't continue to go on too long. Carson, do you have any last thoughts on the indices?
No, not really. Not really. You know, guys, price is just spooling right now, right? And with regards to higher time frames, you know, if you don't know what spooling is just straight one direction price action with no regard to any fill of any imbalance whatsoever. So price is obviously just in a near term, intermediate term spool. And the thing is when you have been bearish on higher time frames and price starts to spool higher, are we retracing or do we have a change in character? And you don't really know that until you kind of let price fill the higher end of those SIBIs, right? We're currently at a point where price is going into daily and weekly SIBIs, and you have to let them potentially fill all of them, just like you would on a 1 minute. You know, it can fill the entire SIBI. Sometimes it fills half, sometimes it fills quarters, sometimes it fills a wee bit for an institutional order flow. Sometimes it fills past them and leaves those mohawks, but then it's that closure, right? So, you know, a lot of our data will come from off of tomorrow's daily closure and even more so after this week's candle closure. You don't have to make money off of this stuff, right? The markets are in a very tricky point right now. And the best thing you can do as a trader is just let them trade without you and study and gain closure and gain data. Prices, like I just said, it's spooling right now. It's only going in one direction. And the thing is it's currently in the opposite directions array. So it can at any given moment turn. And then that's when you have to sit there. And when you start to get some form of downside reaction off of it, if you get some form of downside reaction off of NASDAQ or off of ES, all of those BISIs that we've just created that we haven't filled, if we start to go lower and we start to invalidate those and invert them as resistance, then you can start to see that bearish order flow kick in again. But if for whatever reason we fill these higher time frame SIBIs and we even just go past them, right? Obviously, it will tell its hand. It's not supposed to tell its hand right now. You need a little bit more data. You need to understand what price is going to do with regards to daily closure, weekly closure, and just let the market play. Don't feel like you have to be a participant tomorrow. Don't feel like you have to be a participant Friday. Let it do its thing. It will show you what it's going to do. There's always this area in the market where you can clearly see what's going to happen potentially with regards to where price is and where it's going. And there's areas where it's gray and you don't know and you need closure. And there's news events that are going to show you, right? And I was talking to Henry before this. Odds are if you're far enough along your journey in trading, probably by 9:30, 10:30, you can get a gist of probably where the rest of the week's going to end up. For some of you, it might take Thursday to just finish out entirely as the daily closure. For some, it might take you the weekly closure. For some, you might just not know yet, and it's all just gibberish, and that's okay. But over time, you're going to have to try to understand and follow. And the number one thing you can do is just wait for daily closure, wait for weekly closure. You don't need to make money now. I guarantee you, if you do not trade the rest of the week and you let the week close out, there will be better and more opportunities going into next week, right? It's a very volatile week. And like I said, everything else going on in the world, there's no reason to try to sit here and become a millionaire off of it. Price is spooling. It's given, obviously, if you're following on lower time frames, yes, there's areas and opportunities to make 5, 10, 20, 25, 30, potentially even more than 30 handles. And yes, there's been buy setups. Yes, there's been sell setups if you're following on those lower time frames. But from a higher time frame perspective, we've just been spooling higher. There has not been a very clear, at least with regards to ES. I haven't really been too in depth on NASDAQ, but with regards to ES, we've had one daily shift of character or shift in structure in and around 43.75 with regards to taking out the high, but there has been no pullback for it. There has been no retrace into it. So there has been no setup or rhyme or reason to believe that order flow is on the long term bullish. We don't know what it's like. We don't know what price does when it fills a daily BISI. We haven't filled anything. It just has left it unopened. So you can't gather or do with any information that it's giving you right now. You need to see what it's like when it does go back to those BISIs that we've created. What does it do? How does it react? Is it sensitive and does it go higher? Or does it invalidate, invert, and use as resistance and go lower? Those are the things that you can only let time play out and see and react. And that will allow you to gain confidence and trust into your following trades. Other than that, I'm good. Please be safe. Trade safe. Please be safe. Trade safe. We will talk to you guys. Well, I will not, but Henry will talk to you guys on Sunday. If I have time or whatever, I might be able to. I will be traveling back from the wedding I'm attending on Sunday. I think I will probably be in the car, so I might even attend and say what's up. Obviously, I will be in my car driving, so I won't be able to really do anything crazy, but I might just be a fly on the wall, sit back and chit chat. Other than that, that's it for me. Please, 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 please be safe. Don't feel like you have to trade. You do not have to trade. It's okay. Let the market play. You will have other trades. You will make more money at a later date. Tomorrow is probably not the day. I will not be trading. Pretty sure Henry will not be trading, at least tomorrow. The only thing I will add, and I'm not 100%, don't hold me to it, but Friday, I might do a live trading session. If I don't do it live, I will record it, but it will be if I do it live, great, and you guys can see me. Maybe ask questions in the chat. I won't turn voice on, but you'll see my screen and me. If I just decide to record it and not do it live in front of you guys, I will make sure that you see me and my screen also. But keep that up. I might do a poll in the social and see what you guys think, if you guys would hop in and at least learn. That's not for you to go in and potentially trade what I'm trading when I'm trading, but at least to sit there and study, and I will talk and kind of create it into a educational perspective more than anything. Other than that, I'm good. Henry, all you.
Yeah, all good stuff. Yeah, be safe the rest of the week, everyone. No need to trade the rest of the week. This is a great opportunity to just learn, do some tape reading, and continue to get experience in the markets without putting any real risk on. Do stay engaged on firsthandtrading.com and keep posting, keep asking your any questions you have in the social or in the forum, and look out for an email from team@firsthandtrading.com for Sunday's call, and I'll see you all Sunday at 10.
Henry's got a beard coming in. Henry's got a beard coming in. Watch out, watch out, watch out.